In a surveying role, you're kind of a historian, legal expert,
treasure hunter.
On this episode of the Matthew Bird Podcast,
A lot of people are not sure what surveying is, what do they really handle, and even some of the history. It's something that goes all the way back to like founding fathers.
Advocate for technological innovation and collaboration.
Program manager.
Visionary leader.
And the Chief Cadastral Surveyor for Idaho, Michael Hart.
Trying to find a summer job. I get this random call from this land surveyor. I have a permanent job for you. It's with the federal government. You would be a surveyor. I need to know today. Are you in?
My dad was a surveyor, and I got into survey young. What got me excited about the industry was we got introduced to laser scanning.
And I've really tried to get the technology piece to kind of catch up to that history piece. But when you put that all together, I think we really have a fun and engaging profession.
There's a lack of surveyors, yet the underlying purpose of all these technologies is to map existing environments.
We do a lot of trespassing. We're not allowed to carry any firearms. We definitely don't want to be messing with landlords. They're told that if you cross my property, which is not their property, we know that you're going to get shot.
Hey guys, before we listen to the full episode, we wanted to ask, if you're liking this content, would you please subscribe to the channel and like the video? It really helps me and our team grow this podcast and bring in more awesome guests to the channel. Thank you, and back to the episode. All right, Michael, welcome, and thank you for joining me in the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
So I always tell people how I like to have these conversations. I love introducing kind of what you do now, what your role is, and then I want to go all the way back and kind of talk about kind of your career journey. So
Sure.
Let's start with what you do now.
Yeah, so currently I serve as the Chief Cadastral Surveyor here in Idaho. That position is pretty unique. I think there's only 12 positions nationwide. So I hold the secretarial delegated authority under 443 USC Chapter 3, which basically most of my job entails being the final decision-making or final signatory on all official surveys that happen for the BLM and other federal agencies. So the way I kind of think about it is the federal authority surveys we have are binding on all federal and state levels. And so we take the time to dive in deeper into the survey issues to make sure that when we make a boundary determination, it can withstand any potential protests, IBLA appeals, and sometimes all going up all the way to the Supreme Court. So
Wow, that's quite a role. A very unique one.
It is fun at times and it's daunting at times because it's a lot of conversations. I always tell everybody everything easy is surveyed now, and so all we get is the problems.
Yeah,
the 100+ year old issues that we're deliberating today, and trying to recover as many original evidence and making the best informed decisions we can.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to go back and talk about career history stuff, but also because of the survey aspect, and a lot of our community is focused around geospatial and even surveyors, but we also have a lot of people that are not sure what surveying is, what do they really handle, and even some of the history of like the purpose of it. It's something that goes all the way back to founding fathers and. Could you share a little bit of your thoughts around maybe the history of how that came in and what the importance is? Why does the role that you have and why is the government involved in the boundary and all that?
Well, originally starting in the land ordinance of 1785, kind of perpetuating it to establishing, a lot of the territory that were surveyed in those days, or lack of survey, was unsettled. Mm-hmm. And so you needed a framework in which the federal government can track and also tax. And so that's when they started to come up with the public land survey system, set up, those initial points for each state. And from there you had the cadastral surveyors kind of mark the baselines and meridians, and from there you have the township ranges and sections We have today, I actually kind of looked up ours here. So we're in 3 North, 1 East, Section 2021, and that all originated from the Idaho Initial Point in 1867. So, I mean, it's vital. I don't think we think about it much today.
Most people don't, but it's
I think they just look at their deed. We're just buying and selling land. But what I would say, like, most of this was an unsettled territory. And so in order to buy and sell land, to have the property rights that we know and love today that had to come from somewhere, there needed to be a 0 origination point.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's the role that the Cadastral Survey Department, we don't do a lot of original surveys today, but our job is to maintain and update the public land survey system so we can all have what we like to call domestic tranquility, that I know where my boundary ends and yours begins. So I don't think people think about this in their day-to-day lives much, unless you're in a property dispute with your neighbor, and then that's all you think about. And so I kind of view that we have, a really fundamental part in all this, because, the foundation of all property rights, the definition of what those limits are, is super important to the way we do business today.
Yeah, it's wild. It's most people on the street you walk up to, they'd have no idea what a surveyor is, what they do. I always start with, like, it's those guys on the side of the road with holding the pole,
right?
Or if I say my background is in surveying, that's what I'm like, the guy you see on the side, that's a surveyor. He's measuring something. Same
here. Most folks don't realize, I mean, when I'm trying to pitch, the cadastral survey profession, career to folks, I think everybody's craving this new work-life balance, right? And so a balance of going out into the field, finding, to this day, I mean, I routinely talk to a surveyor about, active surveys we have going on today where they're finding original 1865, 1887 stones, right?
Isn't that wild?
And we're still doing that today.
Yeah.
And so when you explain that to someone, they're like, you're kind of a historian, a legal
treasure
expert,
hunter.
you're a treasure hunter, and I've really tried to get the technology piece to kind of catch up to that history piece. But when you put that all together, I think you really have a really fun and engaging profession.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, I'm curious if you have any examples or stories, because a lot of people don't even realize, like, the modern things they think about with control points or a nail in the ground and a concrete. Well, that's not what was used a long time ago.
No.
What are some examples of, like, things you come across of where, or a property corner or a boundary or something unique? You guys run into some of those, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the most unique stuff is the original wooden posts that they used to set. I mean, you can still recover some of the evidence today. It's still well preserved at times. I came from New Mexico, so I have a lot of experience in land grants, and so Pueblo grants, land grants, and so surveying those boundaries, you routinely get originally marked stones, with the mile corners, the half miles. Generally speaking, they're not in nice flat country, so you're walking miles and miles and miles to recover that stuff. But I mean, finding everything from concrete brass capped corners to wooden posts to original survey stone corners is kind of routine for us.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back a little bit and talk about some of your career journey.
Okay.
What got you into surveying? What did you always know you wanted to be a surveyor? What's some of the story?
Now, I was like most, I didn't know what surveying was. And so this is the weirdest story, but I was walking into Kiewit Construction and interviewed to be a rodman, basically with them, trying to find a summer job. And I get this random call from this forest land surveyor out of Santa Fe. And he said, "Hey, I have a permanent job for you. It's with the federal government. You would be a surveyor, but you'll have to change your degree. You'll have to go through that whole process. Are you in?" but I need to know today.
Wow.
Because if I don't get you in, I lose the position forever.
Oh.
At least the story what he told me. And so I heard permanent job, and as somebody, who didn't want to do like the summer gig, I was like, hey, if I just hate it, I'll just quit. And so I accepted that day, walked into the interview and said, I actually just got a job. And so I walked out, had no idea what it was, and met the surveyor. Turns out to be like one of my best mentors I've ever had. And just after that, it kind of just all happened naturally, changed my degree, and then became the forest land surveyor in 2012 for the Siebel National Forest in Albuquerque.
Oh, cool.
At that point. So, yeah, just kind of happenstance, kind of fell into it to some extent. And then since then, just kind of been working through, got my license in New Mexico, practiced there till 2017. And then BLM called, and at the time thought it was the next logical move in the career path. What I like about this is kind of the distinction I make between Forest Service and BLM. Forest Service has a lot of problems in terms of complexity, but BLM, likely because of the federal authority we do have, it's on a different level. I mean, the complexities, the amount of lawyers you work with day in and day out. I'm currently on 3 cases right now, and they're all problems, and they all are super complex. And so Forest Service was a really great foundation, but when I moved to BLM, all of a sudden you got all the other federal agencies' problems that they couldn't solve. Through state authority surveys, and you were the one deliberating in, and then whether you're the field surveyor helping provide that boundary determination, so for the recommendation for the chief, or the chief now making those final calls on those surveys. The BLM kind of took it to a different level for me.
Yeah, I could see that. What could you describe some of the project types that you do, that you guys handle versus don't? Like what?
So project types that we handle, it's mainly, I would say 90% of our work is traditional boundary retracement.
Okay.
In Idaho here, we work with the districts out in the whole state of Idaho, and they kind of give us their boundary survey needs, but we also work with, the Forest Service, Bureau of Reclamation, U.S. Army Corps, and they provide us their boundary surveys as well. Those are generally sometimes they are traditional. We just need you to identify our property. Most of the time, though, they are super complicated, very choppy title history to them, and they're wanting to either assert their rights and post a piece of land, or try to figure out where their delineation of their boundaries are, and so they call us in to go through that whole complete title history and all the choppy private survey history too, to make that final call there. So that's generally what we do. However, though, I have so I kind of have this weird background too, where I've always been into like the tech side of stuff. And so, through, just general attrition in the federal government, we've taken a lot more scanning work on. And so I acquired, a Trimble SX12 scanner from New Mexico that I brought with me here. And we work with our engineering department doing a lot of their administrative topographic surveys, a lot of their design work. It's not traditional for us, so I think it makes folks feel a little uncomfortable. But the way I kind of tell my crew, I'm all about making us marketable.
Sure.
I don't want to be just boundary. I think the surveyor today, in my view, the cadastral surveyor today too has a lot of answers to a lot of people's problems. It's whether we we advertise those skill sets, and we basically have the same tools that the private sector has too. And so I really try hard to leverage our skills and capabilities to really help provide a solution for people. And so we've kind of dabbled in that world the past couple years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool to see, you don't look that old. I see a lot of old
I'm
surveyors
30, I'm
out
38,
there.
yeah.
38, okay. To kind of grow into such a important role, for the government, for the state, for the survey industry. I too am not that old. I'm in my 30s as well. But also grew up in the survey industry, and I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts because one thing that gets talked about a ton is the lack of new people entering the industry, the amount of people retiring out. Could you speak to some of your thoughts and what you see? And
I kind of had a weird problem in New Mexico. We had, I think it was close to 6 retirements in the course of 9 months. All variety of different things, disgruntled employees, people that were just ready to retire. So I found myself in a weird position. Generally, in your, I would say, mid-30s, late 20s, you don't find yourself in a position where you're going for like supervisory, directional type of positions. And so I also thought too, like, why not me? I kind of thought that, you don't grow into these roles. I know I'm going to make plenty of mistakes, but if it's not me, then who? And I'm always preaching to folks here that, like, we need to be part of the solution and not the problem. So we always have people complaining on the way it should be done, or if I was in that role, the way I would do it. And so I told myself, instead of complaining about it, maybe I should do something about it. So I applied, thought it was a long shot, and I got the field section chief role in New Mexico when they hired in their new cadastral chief. And, he kind of gave me a clear mandate, and he kind of said he had a private sector background. And so he kind of said, burn it down to some extent and let's rebuild it back up. And that is kind of what I did. I kind of went in and, we had no staff. And so I rebuilt a staff of the youngest up-and-coming surveyors in BLM cadastral period at that time. And so as far as my thoughts on, I kind of think we have a marketability problem. I don't think we market ourselves well. I think I try to market myself as relevant and not, I think it's really hard, especially in a surveying role. Most students don't appreciate the history until way later on in their career. So when I sell people, I do not sell them on BLM cadastral or surveying is one of the most historic professions. I think we lose people pretty quick, where I try to sell them on where everybody's kind of at today, and that's the tech. I mean, we all have ArcGIS Pro. We're digitizing and refining LIDAR data sets. We've incorporated those data sets into what we call river movement studies. And so trying to translate, think of a river in the 1880s. That kind of created the foundation for the boundaries there. And then what we try to do is track that river movement study today, because that all affects people's rights. And so people use aerial imagery and we're like tracing stuff. And I kind of took that and was like, well, we could do this all in Arc Pro. We can geo-rectify aerial imagery right now and then incorporate, relevant LIDAR data sets to then help track that river's movement. So when you start feeding that stuff to students, I think that's what kind of brings them in, is the tech side. And then there's nothing that, in my view, the joy you get finding your first original stone, that's when the history comes in. So when I try to pitch a student or the younger generation, I do not pitch the history. some people love that stuff, but I would say the vast majority of students that I meet are very interested in reality capture, the LIDAR, just the tech side first.
Yep.
And then they grow to enjoy the history.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a huge piece. I've told my kind of story a lot of my career journey where my dad was a surveyor and I got into survey young, and I was like, looking back to the teenage years, 18-year-old out in the heat, pounding nails, that wasn't like my dream job. What got me excited about the industry was when we got introduced to laser scanning.
Right.
And it was like this whole mix of like gamification and 3D environments into a real profession,
Right.
And I think that there's a huge opportunity for us to use the technologies to raise awareness to all of the different needs within built environment, within
Right.
construction, engineering, but especially on the survey side where it is such an important role in all construction,
Right.
all land,
Yep.
all of it. Yet, every time I've heard a survey community, a survey conference, everybody just talks about the fact that it's like nobody's entering the industry.
And that is there is truth to that,
Yeah.
right? But I always ask myself, why aren't people entering
What
the
can
industry?
we do?
And I say, like, do we market ourselves
Yeah.
in a way that would make that type of work appealing to somebody?
Yeah.
I think if you market it, kind of like I said before, the work-life balance, you don't have to be in the office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but really hit that tech side.
Yeah.
I think, folks really get engaged with that.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think they grow to love the other aspects of surveying as well.
Yeah.
And so I try to market to the current generation we're in and not so much the way we would have marketed in the 1980s.
Yeah. I think what's unique about it, even with what you're talking about, is that it's an industry that has all of those different roles. Right? Like people who really love the outdoors and the hiking and the whatever, it's like, hey,
This is it for you.
field
Yeah.
roll. Like
100%.
this is going to be
Yeah.
fun. The people who want to sit behind a desk, there's still a job.
There's still a job
and then
there.
you want the in between or a little of both, or there's so much opportunity with the field side, the different technologies, learning to fly drones and deal with scanners and
Right.
underground locating.
Yep.
Like there's all these different field technology needs. And then there's the what do you do with all that data, which is another whole piece. And something else, that I think is super important about the survey role when it comes to all these technologies. This is something we've talked about a lot because I experienced it building a service company in this industry. Is I recently said if I had to put a guess on a percentage, I would guess that 70% of the people that are adopting and using scanning technology and drones and all that know nothing about survey.
I would say that. Bet you that's right.
There are so many people. The demand for the technologies is growing. There's a lack of surveyors, which means a lot of random people are getting into the technologies. Yet the underlying purpose of all these technologies is to map existing environments.
Right.
And you're talking about coordinate systems and accuracies and registration errors across devices. And I'm like, there's this huge miss where the surveyor needs to be pulled back in. I think it's okay that other people are getting into these mapping technologies, but they need to understand survey and when to call survey. And I see it as an opportunity for the surveyor to kind of reclaim the accuracy authority around all the industries that are adopting these tools.
And I kind of see that as part of your mission, right, with the Reality Capture Network. You're bringing all these professionals together, and I wouldn't say forcing them to talk with each other,
Oh,
but
we're
that's
forcing.
that's
We are.
the
No.
natural that's the natural inclination is we all don't communicate well with each other. We're all kind of in our own siloed areas doing different things, and your area is the one. Your conferences are the one that I've seen. You're trying to bring these professionals together and say we need to be talking. The surveyor has to be. There is a role for the surveyor within this. We can't complain that that maybe they're surveying without licenses and stuff like that. Well, it's incumbent upon us to be part of that. And
Yeah.
maybe that will then help us grow our own profession.
Yeah.
That's essentially. So I see that in what
Yeah.
you're doing is
Yep.
you're just trying to bring these professionals together to just have a conversation and talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely part of the mission. Not an exact correlation, but something else that we're talking about as we grow our media side. And, we want to do things like documentaries and go out on job sites and film stuff. And one example of how creating content or even film or things like that could make an impact on an industry, I thought this was pretty interesting. And I don't know all the details to restate this completely accurately.
Okay.
But back in the day, the Top Gun program was really struggling to get recruits. They couldn't get pilots to apply. They were really struggling as a department within the military, the fighter pilots.
Okay.
And a director ended up going, like, understanding this gap and going, we could make a movie that makes that cool,
Right.
that makes that attractive.
Yep.
And they build the first Top Gun movie.
Yep.
And the recruitment for that department in the military, like, it is now one of the most desired positions ever
Right.
because of the movie,
Right.
because of the showcasing the cool part of it and making it look fun and attractive. And to me, I'm like, that's part of our, like, a small piece of
Right.
what we're trying to do with content and discussions. And when we put on our conferences, we try to film all these talks and turn them into really cool, videos that we
Right.
can put out on social media where everybody's watching and consuming. And, on a small scale, trying to do something like that, where it's like, it's not enough. Let's go back to the survey issue.
Yep.
It's not enough for a surveyor to use the tool if nobody knows
Right.
what they're doing.
Right.
You like this idea of how do we start using content and these platforms and social media that exist today that influence everything else? How do we use it to showcase as an industry the opportunities that exist and the fun work
Right.
and the
100%.
that's something where
It's funny you said that because, again, sometimes I feel like I'm just like, I get antsy in my current role and I always have to like search for different things. But we're actually created a promotional video for Cadastral with that in mind, which is like, we need something relevant and engaging for folks today. We're actually going to the final cut right now
very
that
cool.
we're hoping to have together by that America 250 event. But with that in mind, where I said, if I see the same boring video promoting our program, like that is the worst. And so I've been really trying to be like, we did it in three states: Idaho, New Mexico, Colorado, and Oregon. We brought all these professionals together with an outside contractor with that in mind.
That's very cool.
We need something relevant that we can promote to people today that says that with the overall goal, like, that's a job that is a job that I want to do.
wait, where do I sign up?
Exactly.
Where's the job fair?
100%. And so I'm really excited about that project in particular because, we had this old YouTube, it was rough. It was a rough watch, man. And so I said, we need something relevant today that speaks to the next generation. That kind of exactly what you're saying, puts the why behind
Yep.
it. And really that pitch that draws people in to the profession.
Yeah, because it really is it's a very cool industry. It is fun work. There's lots of dynamic to it, but 90% of the people that are in the industry, when you ask them how they got into it, there's like
Right.
two answers.
Yep.
Either I'm related to someone that gave me a summer job,
or I just found it. I just
or
fell into it.
yeah, it was most surveyors that I've met, even up to, licensed professionals, they all started as like a summer job that someone suggested. Like I don't know if I've met anybody that knew out the gate, like, I want to get into surveying.
I don't
like
think
it
you
mostly
would.
has been an accident.
Yeah.
And you can't grow an industry by accident.
I have seen encouraging signs through NSPS,
Yeah.
the National Society, like they are actively trying figure that out.
Yeah.
And I've seen some encouraging signs from those guys. But you're largely correct. It's just I just feel like we have a marketability problem that we just don't market the profession in the correct way. But it takes people like you, me to some extent, to kind of like change what that perception is. I mean, before I moved here, I mean, how do I acquire the youngest department in the nation? I mean, we're talking techs, some surveyors, right? That's all through the way you market the profession to them, and then when they come in, having that be a reality to them, not like you're trying to like spoon feed them this. It
looks fun, and then
this life, and you're just like, all I'm doing is dealing with paper records all day. And no, when they came in, they're doing a bunch of LIDAR stuff. We're helping us with a bunch of our controversial boundary issues in Oklahoma, Texas to some extent, and we're using all the latest and greatest tech to do it. So
that's awesome. Do you have any examples or thoughts of, and maybe you touched on a couple, but some of the things you experienced with leadership above you that helped you be able to grow and accomplish some of your, your desires? I know you shared a bit of like, if not you, who, like your mindset around it, but what were some positive things you've experienced with some of the leaders that have been above you?
So I was fortunate enough to learn under Mike Pertay. He was the last cadastral chief in New Mexico, and what I really liked about him was there wasn't like a fancy leadership style with him. What I thought was really great was he gave me a mandate to blow it up to some extent, but he also got my back when there was pushback. When it's funny when a leader tells you to do stuff and then you do it, and then he kind of like backpedals back and saying like, whoa,
why'd you do that?
You're kind of going a little bit too hard. He was really great at really getting my back and saying, no, I gave Michael a mandate to do this. And with that, I know there's going to be ups and downs and bruises and bumps along the road, but he has a vision, the discipline to get us there. And so I trust him, even though, and what was really great is, he was getting up there in age as well. And so for someone to give you that type of latitude to make decisions, even though he doesn't, like, I think leaders think they have to understand the overall product, the ins and outs and how it works. And I think that's, to be honest, a little unrealistic because you're dealing with so much other stuff. So you almost have to trust your staff saying, I may not understand the overall outcome of the way this is going to look, but I know he does. And so that is probably one of the biggest thing I really appreciated about him, because it got tense. I mean, it's not, everybody likes to be liked. And so it's not really fun to be the most hated person in the department because you're trying to, digitize records. You're trying to incorporate LIDAR technology in. You're trying to revamp the way we produce deliverables, reports. That's not a popular take in terms of this is the way we've always done it for the past 25 years. And then here you are coming in and you're trying to digitize a whole department out, and you're upsetting our norm. And I really appreciated him getting my back in those hard times, because that's really what it took. Is he gave me the mandate, but I didn't have the authority necessarily because he was the boss. And so when people would complain about me to him, he would say like, no, I've given him the rope here. And so you need to trust him that he'll get us to the right place. And we eventually did. But I made a ton of mistakes. As I'm sure you've have throughout your career. I find 50 different ways not to do it. And that one way that I'm like, this is a really sustainable way to go about it. But 50 times that I was like, okay, maybe this isn't the best way to approach this problem. But how do you know unless you try it?
I say this quote way too much, but I'm like, and it applies to so many things, but 100% of the shots you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's like so many people, they will complain about a process, and it's like, what did you try? It's like, same with when it comes into these new technologies and stuff. Oftentimes people will try something once and it didn't work, and it's like, oh, it doesn't work. We have to give up on it. It's like, you gotta. It takes more than that.
Too soon, yeah.
Another example I love, looking back, is Thomas Edison with the light bulb.
Right.
That's another one I throw out. I'm like, I don't know. There's a is it 1,000 or 10,000 iterations to get to the light bulb?
Right.
I use that as another example of like, how many times do we try adopting a piece of technology before we say we give up?
Right.
If you want to create something completely different, transformative, new, like you have to be willing to go through those failures.
100%.
And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results.
Yep.
But if you do something and you try something slightly different, and you try something slightly different, eventually you get to that one 100%. Where it's like, hey, this works, this fits.
And this is what I appreciate about the team I have here in Idaho is not that we don't have our ups and downs in process changing, but like the mindset we have here is, I guess what I appreciate is that we're not afraid to fail.
Yeah.
That we go in, we're trying to modernize the way we track and report our surveys. We're trying to modernize a whole digital records initiative here in Idaho for the entire nation. And we're the guinea pig. We're the ones trying to figure out, how do we digitally sign surveys? How does that process work? How do we produce archival PDFs to the point, that can last, for the next generation, the next decade. And so what I really appreciate about the team here is like, we all really embrace that and are not afraid of the failure behind it. Because I don't actually see it as failure. I just say like, well, great, we just know a different way of not doing it. But if we don't try, we don't innovate, we don't try to push that envelope there, you're really going to be stuck in that cycle of, I don't know, maybe complacency is the great word for that. And I like the department here is like, we're just not complacent.
Yeah.
We're always willing to push it. We're always willing to try it. And that's what I really appreciate about being here in Idaho.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think it's it's only failure if you quit.
Right.
I think it's some saying like that. I don't know, but it's true. And you hear anyone who has built something incredible, successful, big business, whatever, they say the same thing. It's like you can't get to success, whether it's adopting a technology, building a department, whatever. You can't get to whatever your definition of success is without failure.
Right.
And you learn, as long as you're learning from it and you're changing and you're implementing, then it's just part of the process. And I think too many people are just afraid of any level of failure or something going wrong, or, again, we talk about technology. Technology is something not working exactly like expected. And it's like, the other piece I try to tell people about the technology adoption is, even if it didn't completely 100% meet your expectations, is it better than what you were doing before?
Right.
Like, is it any better?
Right.
And
I also think people lack, this is my favorite quote here, the discipline that it takes to get there. Everybody has a vision. Oh, we want to do this, but people they lack the discipline to get there. So I think it's a quote from Nick Saban where it's like, doing what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to be doing it, how it's supposed to get done. And so the discipline to sit down and map that out, and the discipline to push through that adversity to get to the promised land, to get to that overall goal. It takes hard work. It takes time. In the federal government, in my case, it's super frustrating because it goes through a lot of other chain of command, and you're constantly trying to vision cast, have people buy in to your process that then changes their process that they've been doing for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult.
Yeah. What are some of those things when you're trying to convince people to change the old way of doing things? What is it that you do?
I really try to find common ground. I really don't come in it very authoritative in the sense that I think everybody realizes that in order to be relevant in today's world, you have to modernize to some extent. And so I think I try to find common ground there. We all know it needs to change. Now there's a million ideas of how that can happen. And so what I really try to do is find common ground with folks, and then try to tell them kind of what we've talked about there. If we don't try and fail, we don't know it. It's kind of funny in the federal government. You either dictate the process and the way you see it being done, or someone from the top down is going to dictate it to you with no context in how you do your work.
Yep.
Right. And I kind of see that in private business as well. Like, when you're dealing with department level folks, executives, they're problem solvers.
Yeah.
So sometimes their solution to the problem is not the best one because they doesn't have the SME or those folks buy-in. And so I kind of tell when I'm advocating and trying to pitch some of our initiatives to higher level folks, I always tell them either we dictate how this process happens, and that is through failure, trial and tribulation, or someone's going to tell us the way to do it. And in most cases, when that happens, it never is advantageous to anybody. It almost most certainly pushes us back a couple years, if not a decade, and then it takes years then to tease out all those errors and deficiencies with it, then to get us to the process we were already supposed to be at. So I'm more of a ground up, like let's develop it ourselves, and then when we pitch it to somebody, a great idea is a great idea.
That makes sense.
And they'll see it and they'll adopt it.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a lot better to build it with the people that understand why it should be the certain way.
Right.
And get that bought in and approved. They're like, that makes sense.
Right.
Let's do that.
And most of the time, they don't ask too many questions, and they buy in pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because you've kind of worked out a lot of those counterfactuals problems that could be associated with it.
Couple questions, and not knowing what all you hands-on are dealing with tech-wise, but obviously a big focus for us is like looking at all the different technologies and trying to bring to light like what's being used where and how and what are the challenges, and anything that comes to mind for you around the technologies that you guys are adopting, like some of the challenges of the new technologies getting integrated in, whether it's learning curves of the tech or data sizes or transferring or share, what comes to mind around some tech challenges? I
would say there's some learning curve things with it, but I would say the challenges that I see is that especially flying drones in the federal government is particularly difficult because there's so much other regulations on top of it. So we're trying to use more free sites like USGS LIDAR Explorer. And so with that comes accuracies and precisions that you have to be cognizant of. I would, in my perfect world, have a, LIDAR UAS team on standby that I can go have fly these particular projects, set up control. And so there is some of us trying just to work in the confines of the system there. But for more terrestrial-based stuff, SX12 scanners, there is just those traditional learning curves of how to process the data, how to classify it, how to actually utilize it for what the customer is really needing. What I have taken from your conference with Stitch 3D, because another problem that we had is that, like, what's a software or a browser when we're trying to convey data to somebody else? We constantly run, and not everybody has. Even Google Earth nowadays, which sometimes is crazy to me, but they don't have Google Earth. They definitely don't have Trimble Business Center. And so we were trying to find a way to convey the those land management decisions and information to people. And so we've been exploring the Stitch 3D from the conference that
Very cool.
there, because that is a great way
Yep.
to then share out with folks, so they can kind of makes them feel part of your project too, because you're the one collecting it, you're the only one saying it. But how do we translate that to a land manager or the state director, someone at the department level in a way that they need no knowledge of how it works, but they know how to spin a 3D image around.
Yeah, you're not sending them a 20 gig file going, install this software, learn how to open this. No.
Gosh, it's a nightmare. So I would say those are our challenges to some extent. But for the most part, besides all the LIDAR specialized softwares out there, like we generally use ArcGIS Pro for a lot of our stuff. One of our mandates here, and what I'm in charge of, is updating the PLSS data set. So the representation of the public land survey system comes from us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we definitely use a lot of the functions in ArcGIS Pro, the LiDAR tools and all that. But as far as challenges, I think those are the biggest ones, is how to translate some of that information to other folks.
Yeah, that's always been a big one. It's some of this data gets so big, and before companies started creating online tools to share, it was like only very specialized people with really good computers and special expensive software. And, I think one of the biggest things that's starting to change in the industry is people realizing, there's all this data being collected. How can we start making it easier for more people to use? How can we integrate it into other systems?
And that's why I appreciate about the Stitch 3D specifically. It makes it's very easy. You're the one classifying it. It's already pre-classified to some extent for you. And then from there, I'm just sending it out.
Hey, check this out.
Yep.
Yeah, that's nice. If not, this is okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any big challenges that you've ran into through your career journey? Any big roadblocks? Any big things you've had to overcome? Anything like that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say overall, it's I think my age. I think my age is a benefit, but sometimes I think folks look at me as young and inexperienced, and I would say you're probably right.
Yep.
Because I only am as old as I am, and so to be put in an important decision-making role, I think can be difficult at times. However, though, I always tell people I didn't hire myself. I interviewed for the job just like everybody else did. But I also try to, again, reframe folks' minds in terms of, yes, I am young, but I bring a fresh new perspective to the way we can do our work. I think one of my main jobs, yes, it is to make those final boundary determination decisions, and I don't take that lightly. But it's also to market our program and appeal to the next generation. I think there is a level of youth and excitement that I can bring to the table.
Yep.
And that I think that is infectious for folks, regardless if they like me or not. I think people see that. And so I think those are the challenges is that I think people judge you a little bit too quick before they actually get to know who you are and what you really bring to the table. Everybody thought I would be a train wreck in New Mexico, and we managed to be the first department to completely digitize our records, was 100% signing stuff digitally. And, for the way I always tell folks, for an agency that is mandate is records, right? To not be able to effectively get records out to people who request them is just not is kind of a no-go zone in my book, because that's our life. That's what we're supposed to be really good at. And so we did figure that out in New Mexico. It did take a lot of efforts, a lot of frustrations to get there, but that's something that they've struggled with, since I would say the 1980s, is how do we get from point A to point B? Who has the determination, the drive the discipline to get us from point A to point B. And that's something I feel like I can offer is I do have the drive. I am young enough in my career where I can't retire, in the next 20 years. So I'll spend the rest of my days trying to move and modernize the department forward.
Yeah.
And to be relevant in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Here. So I find those are a little bit of issues that I've had to overcome.
That's cool. Yeah. I had a bit of the same, when I got into this technology, it's what kind of elevated me in my career. I was not going down a path of when I got into technology, I was still just a field tech, no special role, not some high management, nothing like that. But I got into the tech, and the tech is what kind of grew my authority. And people started inviting me into conference rooms and wanting to hear about the technology. And I found myself around all these old guys, and I'm like, it's really interesting when you start to gain a level of expertise around something. It doesn't really matter what your age is. Right? It's like, are you driven? Are you learning? Are you applying yourself? And often, I think it comes down to what you said earlier. If not me, then who? It's like anybody could kind of take those additional actions and steps and risks and, maybe the potential of getting rejected. But those are what typically drive people into unique roles at unique ages. And it's something I think it also just shows your journey, shows younger people getting into the industry, how far you could go in a relatively short time.
And I always say that, like, we all bring something different to the table. Like, okay, I don't have 40 years experience, but I have staff that do have that 30 plus year experience, which is great. We all bring something unique and valuable to the table here. I may not have, I always tell folks, I currently have about 17 years in. I don't have 2. So that's
hey, that's good, right?
That's better. But I don't have 30. But I have folks that do have all that experience that I can lean on and really gain their insights. I mean, we had meetings today just to go over a project, and we had a variety of different perspectives. Some from folks going back to, the original survey in 1870 and the way they would have conducted it. Some of that stuff I don't know. By nature of me, just not being in to the thick of all these problems. But I always tell folks, we all bring something unique to the table, but the overall goal is to solve problems. And in my case, sign and defend the most legally defensible decisions we can make. And that doesn't just come from me. I'm the final guy who has to do it and defend it, but it's all a diversity of opinions and perspectives that come in.
Everybody else sure? You're sure on the answer? Everybody agree?
But again, so we more often than not, we have two camps, and then I have to make what I feel is the best defendable decision. And so that doesn't put you in a popular position. But I always tell folks that, like, hey, man, we all bring something unique to the table here. So the fact that I'm 38 doesn't really have any bearing. I bring something really unique to this team, and I think folks know that, as does somebody who has 35 years experience brings to our team as well.
And I think it's honestly one of the traits that makes someone a good candidate for a leadership role is not the, I'm the smartest guy in the room, dictator type mindset. It is, I might be the dumbest person in the room, but I surround myself with people that it's like, I know how to bring the team together, and I'm doing the best to, like, pull the insights from people to help make decisions. You hear the same thing about building a business, building anything is surround yourself with other brilliant people, right? Those are the types of people that you want to be in a leadership role. They don't have to have all the answers. They have to know how to work with people, communicate well, have a vision, and then execute on those things collectively.
I think that sums it up really, really well, is because, I have staff that are doing these really national big GIS initiatives. I have no idea how they're doing it. I just know it's a good idea, and my job is to remove the roadblocks in front of them. And so if that kind of gets gets into having meetings with more high-level managers, trying to get the yes out of them. That's my role.
Yeah.
But after I get the yes, I give it right back to them
Yep.
and say, let me know if you need any more help along the way.
Around the last piece, maybe around the technology and kind of the future of the industry. How do you see overall like the technology adoption and the importance of it for the survey industry? You know, it feels like there's so much technology out there. I think it feels like there's like pieces that are being pulled and kind of adopted and brought in. But how do you look at technology adoption in whole for the role of the survey community?
I think it has to be necessary. I think that it's only going to get better, and the engines that drive it, AI now, is just going to get more and more advanced. So I think it's incumbent upon, private and public sectors to adopt it to our best abilities here and try to figure out how to utilize it. The thing is that, like, until you have it, you really don't know how to utilize it to some extent. And so, I figured out, kind of just with the LIDAR scanner that we had, I mean, I bought it knowing generally how I was going to use it. But, an example being, we used it, we had a situation in New Mexico where our power line started a big historic fire. Everybody was playing the blame game with each other. And so I was one of the lead fire investigators in New Mexico, tasked with, at the time they were hand drawing out their maps for their investigations. And I said, that's the no-go there. So I said, what if I just bring in our GNSS equipment and I can create the maps? I'm almost like your GIS professional. I'm relating the on-the-ground data and the overall map that you all are looking for. And that kind of morphed into us acquiring the SX12 and then scanning a whole entire environment that they did use to bring up, and again, kind of that sharing piece to bring up in a court in court.
Yeah.
And so imagine having a reality capture, right, of that environment, and you're able to make real-time decisions and kind of get a snapshot in time of what we encountered on that specific day. So like I'm really big into, like, I think we have to incorporate it.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to get better. And I think kind of the sky's the limit in terms of what you can use it for. I mean, most folks didn't think LIDAR was a smart idea on river movement studies. And now I can't imagine doing anything without it. Like if I don't have the LIDAR, I was like, well, how the heck am I supposed to date these banks from these historic aerial imagery if I have nothing to base it off of?
Yeah.
And then on the ground, everything I can keep telling folks, it looks flat on the map and there's no vegetation on the LIDAR. You get out, you have huge trees, vegetation out, and you can't make heads or tails of what's a historic bank and what's, an arroyo, right? And so we, using that, we're able to, like, track out those banks. So, like, it's completely necessary for the growth of the profession and to keep us relevant, in my book.
Yeah. I experienced a lot the same, using the technology. It's like usually whoever's getting the tech and using it has one specific reason in mind.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, wait, we can do this.
Right.
Oh, and it lets us do this.
Right.
And it's like, it doesn't only replace a different or older workflow. It also creates, like, these different applications and deliverables and analysis that were literally not possible until you had the data. Like, it's really crazy.
You have a situation too, like we do a lot of trespasses, so people trespassing on the public land, and when you're told that you're going to get shot if you cross my property, which is not their property, we know that, but we're not allowed to carry any firearms outside, so we definitely don't want to be messing with landowners. So we go on that side of the fence line and we scan everything on the other side.
Yep.
And so we are still able to get our jobs done, and in a geospatial fashion that we still can achieve that centimeter level accuracy that we use for a lot of our trespass investigations too. So it's even that there's a public safety component too, is like, I'm not trying to put our guys in situations that is accelerating, a conflict.
Yeah.
We'll just go on the other side of the line and we'll scan everything on the other side, and then we'll still accomplish the same goal.
Do you see, I don't even know all of the requirements, but, there's still a lot of paper drawings that have to get submit for, different deliverables and records and cities and whatnot, or old CAD files. Do you see it getting to the point that at some point the 3D data is something that is submit for or taken in on things like that? Like, do you see the future where that
for the official record? Probably not. I think we're a long way from that. But for a lot of administrative stuff, we do the LIDAR deliverable is part of the package now. Again, trying to put it in a form. Most of the work we're doing is for engineers, of course, and so trying to get it into a form that they can use and design off of. But no, that's a standard part of what we do now. When we issue a topographic survey out, when we issue out a trespass report, they have access, whether it's a Stitch 3D representation of it, they have access to more of a like real world LIDAR deliverable. Cool. But probably not for the official product.
Just curious.
But one day, but probably not now.
Okay. I know another thing I wanted to talk about was the 250
years. So, we are putting on an event here. I had our state director come into my office, and she asked me about the Boise Meridian Initial Point, established April 19th, 1867, and asked me if that would be a good way to bring in for Idaho part of a celebration for the America 250 event on July 4th. And of course, I say yes. I think that's a great representation of America, help establish everybody's property rights, the land tenure system today as we know it. And so we are celebrating on May 2nd, 2026 at the old Idaho Penitentiary site. We're bringing industry professionals in. My goal is to kind of get the mix of the old and new together. So we're going to have some old historic chains that they used to use in the 1860s, all the way to drones and LIDAR that we're using today. And so, it's I'm trying to make the celebration. Yes, it is focused on the Idaho Initial Point, the Cadastral Surveyor, but this is really for all industry professionals. We all have a part to play in this. Our function is to maintain and the public land survey system, but really that's part of the private survey community too, with CPNFs and their records of surveys as well. So I'm trying to make it. It's May 2nd. I'll put maybe some stuff in the show notes. If that would be okay.
Yeah, totally.
And, I want everybody to come out. I think it's going to be a really fun event for folks, and ultimately can celebrate our land tenure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
System here.
Very cool. So we'll definitely gather any details we can from you that we can include when we put this out. That way, anybody that's interested in coming and checking it out and bring together some more of the local community, I think that'd be awesome.
That sounds great.
With kind of everything you've learned, gone through, up to this point, if you're talking back to some of those younger people who are, starting their career journey, what's kind of a summary of advice you would give to them?
That's a great question. Probably just don't be afraid to take chances. I think a lot of folks think they have to have all the answers before they can move. And I think you definitely need a generalized vision, but I don't think you need all the answers to get there. I generally have found all my answers as I move through a process. And so don't be afraid to start. Be courageous, be brave, and don't be afraid to fail. Like, I don't, if failure marks your career, then I failed a lot. But I've brought in now 2 programs through the gauntlet of a fully digitized record system, incorporation of all like relevant, geospatial deliverables. And so I would say just don't be afraid to fail. I mean, because I don't really view it as that. I view it as just 50 different ways of not knowing how to do it, right?
Yep.
And so, and then for the younger generation, like there is a unique opportunity. Yes, the surveying profession is on the older side. I think the average age now is 60 years old for a surveyor, which is definitely up there. But there's so much opportunity out there for the younger generation to step in. And like I never thought I would be on a podcast or be speaking at conferences, but this is, if it's not you, then who?
Yep.
Right? And so I try to embrace it. I don't try to do it perfectly, but I think that would be my advice.
Cool. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's those are great. Thanks for sharing them. One example that comes to mind of the, you miss more shots than you win, right? Is like back to the Michael Jordan,
right.
He says the same thing. He's like, I'm known for like 200 of the shots I made, not 200,000 of the missed shots. It's like the more shots you take, the more chance you are going to have at making some of those shots. And that same message of just, be willing to fail, be willing to try, when you do fail or when you fall, like get back up, keep going, keep trying.
And the work that goes into the success too.
Yeah.
I mean, all the practices, how many shots did he shoot at practice? And and so people usually see the outcome and say, wow, he's so successful. It must have came so easy. And they hardly ever see the late nights, the frustrations, the ups and the downs, and the work to get there.
Yeah. And I think your final note on the survey piece, it's very true that, when you look at the average age and you look at the opportunity there, if the trajectory doesn't change and more people keep retiring than entering,
right,
it just creates an even higher demand and a much bigger opportunity for the people that do decide to enter it,
right,
because of the scarcity.
Right.
And it's such an important role that, surveying is not going away.
No.
It's important across all of the building industries. People, I know entire survey businesses that all they do is work in transportation, or all they do is work in utilities, or all they,
and they're all overworked,
or construction, or they're all overworked. Everybody's hiring.
Yep.
And opportunity follows demand.
Right.
And there's a lot of demand. There's not a lot of people entering. So yeah, it'd be pretty cool to see the efforts that people in the industry start putting in, you coming and sharing, and hopefully us amplifying some of those voices, to actually see at some point start looking at those numbers and going, hey, the recruitments are increasing.
I think I've seen some encouraging signs. I think it's going to be a while till we see the fruits of those, but I think folks are starting to realize that the strategy has to change a little bit. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming in and sharing a bit about what you do, the survey industry, specifically here in Idaho as well. And we look forward to sharing this message out, and of course, hopefully coming by to your event as well.
That sounds great. Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.